How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the podcast to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, I'm okay. Little out of rhythm because yesterday's guest had to cancel because of an equipment problem, so this episode is a record at 8 a.m. and turn it around immediately after sort of affair. But I want to keep new episodes going every weekday, so here we are. Work, day job continues to stay hectic, but in a good way. And I actually had a tiny degree of in-person interaction yesterday, which was weirdly rewarding. I was taking my dog out pretty late last night, late for me, 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I noticed a couple of kids hanging out behind my neighbor's empty house. They were trying to be quiet, but it was pretty obvious they were there. So I got Benny back in the house, picked up my watch or my phone, turned on a flashlight, and walked over there to find out what the deal was, make sure nobody was trying to break into Tammy's house now that she's moved, etc. Turns out it was a neighbor's granddaughter and a pal just hanging out on the patio in the backyard because they wanted to have somewhere to go. And the moment, that became clear, I figured if I was a teenager during this whole mess, I'd probably be trying to get out a little too. So once I was assured they weren't a B&E crew, I headed back home. Still, standing about 10 feet away from someone and exchanging a few sentences, that counts for something, right? So, speaking of sociability and interaction, today's guest is author and professor Shachar Pinsker, who's joining me from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, Shachar and I spoke a few years ago when his wonderful book, A Rich Brew, How Cafes Created Modern Jewish Culture, came out from NYU Press. We recorded in a coffee shop of sorts, which added to the ambiance. The book itself, detailing a history of cafes and coffee shops throughout Eastern Europe and what it meant to Jewish culture and Jewish participation and again, that in-person interaction, I figured was kind of weirdly appropriate for Shachar in particular, given that, we're in a period of social distancing. Now, on top of that, Shachar and his family got walloped by COVID-19 starting in mid-March. They're recovered now, he and his wife and both kids, and he's just submitted a piece to the Chronicle of Higher Ed about that experience in concert with having to learn online teaching on the fly. Now, that piece hasn't been published yet, but he sent it to me, and it's awfully good. I'll let you know when it's live. Now, as caveats go, not a lot. Audio came out just fine. My dog did not start squeaking toys or anything mid-conversation, so here's me and Shachar. But we may as well start. Yeah. My opening question is, can you taste coffee yet?
Yes, I can. I'm not sure if it's the same as pre-COVID-19, but I can taste it definitely. And the smell, everything is coming back. I'm actually, with a little bit more time and being at home, started to not just make coffee, but also to bake bread and stuff that I never baked before. My wife is a caterer, a chef, and a baker, and I joined the wagon trying to bake some bread and yeah, it's really great. So yeah, it's nice to. It's also trial and error. Try different things with. It's fun.
My wife is more of my wife's more of a cook than a baker, and to her, baking is. I don't want to say too formulaic, but it's strictly the recipe. You have to have things in those proportions, whereas cooking, you can have a little more improvisation and fun with. But the baking can smell awfully good. Again, provided you've got your sense of smell back.
Right. She lost the sense of smell and taste. Really, but she keeps on doing these wonderful things. She just baked some bagels. I never thought you can bake really good bagels at home. But you can.
See, we're all going to become self-sufficient this way, except we'll run out of supplies. But how bad was the whole the whole period for you? How tough was this compared to, illnesses and, stuff in the past for you?
It was pretty bad. I mean, it's really hard to separate what was really happening physically and what was happening mentally, and there's so many things that nobody knows. I didn't know. I still don't know. Healthcare providers don't know. They kept telling me this is so new. We were just learning about it. We don't know. And to do kind of this self-diagnosing or doing it on the phone, very strange things like, okay, I'm out of breath, but I told them, and they said, okay, but you can speak a full sentence. that means
Yeah,
that means you are relatively okay. You don't really need to come. You don't really need to come to the ER, which I didn't. I try to avoid as much as I can, and
sure.
yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad, and it was scary, and it's just not knowing what it is, and reading the news and seeing what's going on and thinking, you're gonna die, there's all these dark thoughts go to your mind. But then there was also these moments of I'm feeling better. It's not so bad. It just moved from 1 second to another, and obviously a lot of it is really kind of what is in your head and what you think is going on, and but the uncertainty and just not knowing what's going on and what is it, and the fact that the people on the other side, when I spoke with them on the phone or didn't know either, it's not very reassuring.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jeez.
It was pretty bad. I mean, we probably all had it in the whole family, although we'll never know for sure because only my son got tested, and then I got tested, and my wife and my other son did not.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we all had it.
Yeah. How quick was the timing from family member to family member? Did it spread really, really quickly, or was there a couple of days lag where you were trying to be careful, but just, yeah.
Yeah, there were a few days. There are a few days of lags. I'm kind of half jokingly think about it as synchronous, asynchronous, because that's
Yeah.
that's the new language that we learn. Because
For teaching,
yeah, I'm teaching, and all these buzzwords and all these methods about defective teaching. It's kind of going through my mind because I had like 24 hours to decide what's the most effective way of doing things, and then the virus started, and I don't know. I came to think about it in kind of similar way. So I think, yeah, it was asynchronous, although you never know because sometimes there might be symptoms that only come after a few days.
sure.
I also don't know, and I probably will never know, if my son, who had symptoms first and was tested very early, where you could still get tested, if he was really the first, or he was just the first to show symptoms, because both of us traveled a few weeks before. I was in New York City, and then in Columbus, Ohio. He was in Maine. Well, we both flew through New York City airport, and who
Oof.
knows?
Yeah.
Who
Even
knows?
in good circumstances, that's not great. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
How was family in Israel?
Family in
How was the,
Israel,
yeah.
family in Israel are okay. They also didn't know, and what's going on, and things changed. My mother is not young; she's on her own. She's doing well, but it was my sisters live very close to her. One of my sisters is working in a hospital, and
Mm.
I mean, it's incredible because in the beginning it didn't seem so bad. They didn't have patients in the hospital, and then when they started, suddenly it was like, okay, you can't. To my mother, you have to stay on your own. You can't really come. You can't really come and spend time with the grandkids and with.
Yeah.
So yeah, things change really quickly, but obviously every place is different, and they had to deal with it in a different way. And I think they were a little more successful. It's a smaller country, and it was easier to kind of lock down people, especially for the holidays, for Passover.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a podiatrist here in New Jersey who spends 2 weeks here, 2 weeks back in Israel, and he was working on me the day before flying home, the first week of March, and I'd come back from Japan 2 weeks earlier in February.
Right.
Mentioned this to him partway through, and he just stopped.
Yeah.
And he was like, if we were in Israel, they would put you in quarantine right now. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
And you're not going to tell them anything when you go through customs tomorrow when you land, right? He's like, no, because my 2 weeks in Israel would be spent in quarantine, and I would turn around and come back here. So I don't think he's come back since. I think he's just stayed there because now anyone coming into the country is he'd basically be under quarantine for the full time that he would normally spend back there. So I think he's put the U.S. practice on hold for now. But again, culturally, I think you could pull that off in a smaller country and one that's used to alarms like this in some respects.
Right.
But I haven't been back since 1984. So
yeah, that's incredible. You were in Japan just the beginning of March?
Middle of February. And
middle of February.
We knew, but people seemed to be, every business meeting involved shaking hands. And I was like, but we shouldn't be doing that, right? Chinese tourism had already been stopped. And so, yeah, it was making its way through, but there was some degree of not understanding how bad it was. And it came back here. And then within 2 weeks, much like the Chronicle of Higher Ed piece that you sent me, by just the end of the second week of March, the whole world, the whole of America starts to freak out over it. Yeah. So about the Chronicle of Higher Ed piece, thank you for sending it in advance. Can you tell me about teaching and the synchronous and asynchronous modes, what it was like starting that while you were in the throes of COVID, and how it's working now that you're pretty much past everything?
Yeah.
Which is a bunch of questions tossed into one, but how's teaching life?
Yeah. No, I'm done with teaching. The semester in Michigan starts early and finishes early. So I'm done with teaching, and there was this couple of very dramatic days where everything was going on as usual. I just came back from a break where I was in New York, and we went back to classrooms, and it seemed like everything is going to be normal. And then within a couple of days, we got this message from the president: classes are cancelled. They will resume on Monday remotely. And what does that mean? Most of us did not know. So very quickly, all these units in a huge university like Michigan put together all these workshops, and it was really kind of emergency because people have been doing this for a long time, but most of us did not have this kind of experience. So trying to understand how to do it pedagogically, technically, which platform to use. It was just overload of information, all done in a day and a half. And honestly, I think that only people who have some experience doing online teaching and remote teaching knew really what to do. Most of us, including myself, we were just trying to think how we're going to salvage it and how we're going to somehow mimic the teaching experience in person, in lecture, and in discussion, remotely. So it's not really switching suddenly from one mode of teaching to another. It's really kind of emergency, just trying to think how it's going to work. Doing something very similar, but instead of being in the lecture hall in the classroom, I'm at home. And the students are God knows where. Many of them were in transit. Many of them. So it was very difficult. I mean, I started it before I knew I was sick and before I had symptoms. So I had maybe a couple of days, maybe only one day, where I was. I didn't have symptoms. I didn't think I had the virus. And then when I did, I really didn't know what to do. What's the right thing to do? I knew that my students are under tremendous pressure, traveling, trying to decide what to do, where to go. Some of them might be sick. Some of them are taking care of family members who are sick, lost jobs, and all kind of pressures. And I was thinking, for some of them, the last thing on their mind is my course. But then there were other students who seemed very eager to continue. So I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't sure myself what I have, although I thought I was pretty sure, but it wasn't verified because I couldn't get tested. So, and the combination of just not knowing what to do, worrying so much, not being able to sleep, having these bad symptoms, reading what's going on social media, where everything is amplified, and on in 1 minute people are talking about dying and really dire black predictions, and on the other hand silly things like I'm going to use Zoom and how I'm going to look the best and have this amazing. So I don't know. I got so I really wanted to stop all that, And I wrote about sociability. I wrote about. I've been doing research and thinking about that, and that was kind of always on my mind. And then in the end, it really became. I saw that even with all these really bad mimicking of the experience of seeing people face to face and being able to interact using electronic digital means, it's terrible. I mean, it's not really, it's a bad mimicking of the real experience. On the other hand, I felt like it helps me, as difficult as it was, instead of following the news all the time. It was good to just listen, just do the reading and watching and think about it and see how students are responding to it. So that was the asynchronous. I did that maybe for 1 week or half a week. And then I thought, I might as well try, if I can, to see them and they can see me, even though it was very difficult for me to talk. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell what they understood and what they didn't. I told them I'm not feeling well, so I suspect many of them had a feeling that I might have the virus, but I never told them until much later. Yeah, so it was a very strange but mixed experience, and also kind of unpredictable. I wouldn't be able to tell before. I thought it's going to be just like a challenge, and somehow I don't want to say, okay, I'm sick, that's it, until the end of the semester, we're not going to have any sessions. I knew it's going to be very, very difficult, and maybe I shouldn't do it. But then when I did it, I saw that it helps me, and at least some of the students were quite happy to kind of be distracted from what's going on and just engage with the materials. It felt like it was kind of saving me and some of the students anyway.
Nice. Now, was the asynchronous stuff difficult or just different for you in terms of, even though you're lecturing without any sort of audience, just recording, not being able to just even see, the students in front of you? Because I wonder. Yeah.
That was very difficult, very awkward. I also did it when I was really, really sick, and everybody said, this is the best way of doing things, and it does make sense, because if you teach online, the whole idea is that you don't want to have a specific time where everybody has to jump in, because you don't know where people are. They're on different time zone. They have different accessibility to the technology, and it's very shaky, and so it's better to do something to record it and just put it out there, and then the students can see it. But it was very difficult for me to do it in a good way, and it's hard to tell whether it's probably a combination of what you say, how awkward it is to record something without seeing anyone responding to you, without seeing those people. You look at people in the eyes and you see, some nodding, some sense of understanding or misunderstanding, and being able to not just lecture, talk, but to ask questions, to get some response, to have some kind of interaction. I found that that was very difficult, perhaps impossible, although I know it's possible. And it got me to think quite a lot about what to do, how to do something, because there are very good online courses, but it really needs to be planned ahead. I read somewhere that it's kind of, if you really want to do a good online course, it takes about a year, and people described it as kind of writing a book, which is very labor intensive, and it's not something that you can. Obviously, it's not something you can really switch within 24 or 48 hours, and not even to prepare for the next semester to suddenly create this well-designed online course.
Especially at the time when your brain was getting walloped by lack of oxygen, and you didn't even know that was occurring. To be honest, I think the content is one side of it, and just the delivery. It's for me one of the skills from doing like 400 episodes of this. You build skills through repetition, and I'm sure if you stayed with that particular model for like a year, you would see all sorts of things that, oh, that's how you do this. You just pick up on things over time. But yeah, much like this sort of conversation versus the time you and I met in person in a coffee shop, it's different. Not being able to see the person, not getting that body language, you try to pick up on verbal cues. You try to over accentuate some verbal cues to make sure the other party's picking it up. But yeah, it's all different than what we're used to. So I can't imagine having to do that on the fly, feeling the responsibility towards the students, and the fact that your body was getting annihilated by COVID in the same moment. Yeah, I mean, so congratulations for pulling that off in any way. So good job.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was it was a challenge, and we didn't speak so much about it. It is kind of a very strange feeling. What you said is very correct. I felt physically how my body is fighting, because I guess that's what it is. I mean, I don't understand. I'm not a physician. Obviously, I don't have the knowledge and understanding, but I could really feel my body fighting. Waking up, sweating in the middle of the night, and it's the body really fighting the virus and trying to overcome it. And yeah, it was a strange feeling, but when I recovered, it's also it's kind of a strange mixture, because you feel like, okay, you fought it, you succeeded, you recovered. So in a way, I kind of felt very energized, maybe even more energized than usual. But then at the same time, there's a lot. I mean, it's much slower than I anticipated, and I kind of told people and friends and family members that around the time of the Seder for Passover, until then we were all four of us in the family in self-isolation, not just in quarantine at home like most people in the country, but we couldn't even we weren't even together in the same room, and were not able to eat together and sit together. And then because we didn't know whether all of us have it or not, and who can infect or make things worse. And then when we all got together, this was the first night of Passover, and I felt, that's it. I recovered. I'm feeling better. It lasted about 3-4 weeks, and I'm better. But then it was really surprising how I couldn't do even very basic things physically and mentally. So I understood that the recovery process really takes a long time.
Yeah, that's the few guests I've had on who've had it. They've had it up and down the scale in terms of severity. No one had to be hospitalized, but yeah, the sense of, oh, it looks like I'm past it, and then a day later, it's no, this is going to linger beyond the 3 to 4 weeks that they posited. Yeah, it's got to be, again, like you said, it's the uncertainty on top of everything else. It's got to be maddening. But let me ask, the book, as you mentioned, it was about the interchange of ideas and social life and in coffee houses with Jews. If social distancing and this sort of isolation goes on for an extended period, do you see that having a fallout in terms of just how people interact and you know, the way we just shoot the breeze, the way we, you know, I'm supposed to be in this big negotiation with the FDA and some other industry groups this fall, and everything is supposed to be in person. And we've already talked about, you know, teleconferencing in, but a big benefit of all that was just the little side conversations in the hallway outside of the conference room. And the idea that that'll go away is damaging. And I wonder, given the thrust of your research, like you said, on the whole social interaction aspect of who we are, you know, what do you see as, or are you considering any sort of long-term damage to people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking a lot about that, and I as I wrote in the piece, I see a lot of people coming up very quickly with these predictions and how everything is going to change and whether it's good or bad. I'm a lot more. I don't know if it's because of what the experience of being sick. I think it's a very humbling experience, and I think that it's very difficult to predict and to say what is going to happen and how things are going to change and how dramatic it's going to be. Definitely it's going to be different, and definitely we're going to lose all that contact that come with real interaction. You know, a lot of people spoke about that already and wrote about it from the very beginning, whether social distancing is the right word, because it is physical distance. Which is also social, right? But at the same time, we can have social interactions. We are having now interaction, which is very different from meeting in New York in a coffee shop and doing it in a digital way, right? On the other hand, this is not something new. It's not. I mean, our world with technology has been changing anyway. I've been writing in the book, you know, the conclusion. Really kind of open questions about what happened to all these places, what happened to all these interactions, why in my particular case, the you know, modern Jewish culture that happened, so much of it was happening in places like coffee houses, why it doesn't happen in these places anymore? And that was without the pandemic. So and it's not just, I was trying to think very carefully and not to be too nostalgic about it. Oh, you know, just the good old days where people could be together at a coffee house and interact and have all this exchange of ideas. And now it's kind of going, because there is, I mean, but when you look back, this interaction was not always so great. It accentuated all the problems and all the tensions that exist anyway. And so it's really interesting to think about it. I mean, I think things definitely are not going to go back to how they were before, and we are going to lose a lot of these interactions. And at the same time, obviously, there are many good things that are happening, and people are finding ways to interact with each other that are different. I have to say, you know, I decided in the middle of all that, part of it because of the reasons we just spoke about, to deactivate my Facebook account. I just couldn't take it. People on one
Congratulations.
hand, you know, yeah, thank you. And it's a banal thing, you know. I mean, I'm not the first one, obviously, to say that, but since then I've been in touch with people. I called people, we spoke on the phone, or we spoke rather than click on likes and, you know, write a couple of words. And that's the social media, that's the social interaction. It's just so, it's distorting everything. So, there's lots of paradoxes there. that obviously in time like this, people check on each other. People, I've been talking to my mother in Israel. My wife spoke with her, is speaking with her parents in England on a daily basis, and we never used to do that
Sure.
before. So yeah, it's really hard to tell where things are going to. I mean, obviously things are going to change, and the places that are going to suffer most are coffee houses, restaurants, bars, places of conviviality, places of where it is really there. I think it's really worth thinking about this kind of combination of the physical and social proximity that happens in these places. And I've been thinking a lot about something that actually was not in the book, but now I'm trying to write about it. The idea of conviviality, which is this combination of living together, but it also kind of evolve really around specific places of eating and drinking and being together. And what does it do? And it's very clear that these places suffered maybe the most, of all businesses and all. You just can't do it remotely or electronically, and these are going to be the last places, if at all, to reopen and when they reopen, what is the point of going to a coffee house? Well, there is a point, because you're going to get, if you go to a place, not Starbucks, but if you go to a place that can produce really good cappuccino, that's going to be a pleasure.
That's a reason in and of itself. Yeah,
that's a reason in and of itself, right? But if you enjoy going to these places because you like to be close to other people, that's probably not going to happen.
Right. And did anything in your historical research help you with analogs for what we're going through, like the 1918 flu or anything like that? Were there things that you looked at and thought, the world kind of went through this, in this respect or that, or a part of the world went through this in, this way or that way?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that, and actually, I have now a new project that is a collaborative project looking at feuilletons, which are it came from the book, because a lot of the text of what people wrote about their experiences were in this place in the newspaper, which is not news. It's not supposed to be the objective news of what is going on, but it's not just storytelling fiction. It's kind of some kind of mixture of both. And because I was sick, and because I could only concentrate barely on keep up with the reading and watching of what I assigned my student, I didn't have enough time to do what a lot of my colleagues are doing and what I and my collaborators are planning to do, which is to look at historical newspapers and see how people responded and how people wrote about and thought about the pandemic that happened 100 years ago. I know a lot of people are doing it, and there's wealth of materials and lots of things that we can learn from it. I didn't have a chance to do it, but I will in the future. And the other thing I started to say, and I want to say that I don't know how long it's going to last, but I actually feel right now very energized in terms of my own research and writing. I feel as if the whole experience of going through this extreme illness and uncertainty and all that, now that I really recovered, and I can also I can go on bike rides and take walks and do a little bit of exercise. It's a kind of a strange feeling, because I feel like there was some kind of fog that was around, not just in the last 2 months, but maybe in the last 2 years, that finally cleared, and I can think more clearly, and I feel more energized in terms of writing and research and thinking. So that's a very nice feeling. I hope it's going to last for a long time, and not just this kind of exhilarating feeling that when you feel better, you feel like you can do a lot more, and we'll see.
I look forward to seeing the results, and I hope you'll be able to make it out to New York someday when we're actually all able to sit in person again. We'll,
Right.
you and I can sit down in another coffee shop and record another conversation.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Shachar, thanks so much for coming back on the show. I'm glad you're recovered-ish. You're pretty much recovered, and we'll go with that. And I'm glad you can taste coffee again.
Yeah. Thank you, Gil. I appreciate it. It was I enjoyed the conversation.
And that was Shachar Pinsker. Go check out A Rich Brew, How Cafes Created Modern Jewish Culture from NYU Press. Really good book. If you're into coffee and Jewish culture, like I am. Shachar's site, it's at UMich. It's got a really complicated URL, so I'm not going to read it out here. It'll be in the show and episode notes for this one. You can find it in his Twitter bio. He is S. Pinsker or Spinsker on Twitter. That's SPINSKER. He's also on Instagram with pictures of all that bread he's been baking at SM Pinsker, all one word. I'll let you guys know when that Chronicle of Higher Ed piece about his COVID experience comes out. And we will be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me any news, little update or whatever, or if you want to talk and share something with the listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18, GROTH18 at gmail.com. You can find my contact info at our sites vmspod.com and chimeraobscura.com/VM. The sites also have a link to the COVID-19 sessions, which has all of these daily episodes, which started in March 25th, although there's a precursor one that's just me rambling about the whole March meltdown and everything. You can also just subscribe to the Virtual Memory Show via iTunes, Spotify, or other podcatchers to make sure you get every episode. And you can always go look through the archives in the before time. Now, in the before time, I always recorded in person, but now I'm using Zencastr.com so I can do these remote sessions. If you're interested in using it, it's spelled ZENCASTR, so no final E. There's a free hobby level as well as a pro level that's $20 a month. I've been using pro since I realized I was going to be recording these every day. My Patreon supporters more than cover the expenses for this, plus my web hosting, especially because I'm not spending money anymore on parking, tolls, subway trips to coffee shops with guys like Shachar, etc. So all those in-person episodes have to go by the wayside until it's safe again, but that means I can do more of these sort of things, save time on transit, etc. Anyway, if you can spare anything, if you got any money to give, then go find the Patreons, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, GoFundMes, tip jars, whatever, for the artists and writers you like, and show them some support. If you can't do that, give to charities like your local food bank. I've got Center for Food Action here in New Jersey, as well as other places that are going to help people in need. I'm Gil Roth. It is May 6th, 2020, and this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.